God's one and only voice is silence means that God is that which is indivisible. There is no place that God is not. And you can't divide God up and say that God is on this side or God is on that side. I've often said that God isn't doing anything different now than God was doing an hour ago or 100 years ago. And God isn't doing anything different now than he will be doing 1,000 years from now. God is exclusively here and now, not elsewhere, not in heaven someplace apart from us, but here, now, and indivisible. And the word indivisible is very important, because that which is everywhere and cannot be separated or carved up is something that we have a great deal of difficulty in the world of the physical form experiencing and understanding. Because our world, the world of you listening here, is a world of dichotomies. It's a world of paradoxes. We divide everything up. And dichotomies are just our way of being. We divide everything in the world up. The only reason we know that something called darkness exists is because of light. If there was nothing called light, we wouldn't know anything called darkness. The only reason we have a concept called up is because we have something of its reverse called down. You've never seen a person with a front who doesn't have a back. You've never seen a person with an outside who doesn't have an inside. We divide everything. Everything is in the world of the divisible. In the Bhagavad Gita, it speaks about transcending the dichotomies, figuring out a way to get past the up-down, the male-female, the good-bad, the right-wrong, the old, the new, the alive and the dead. Everything has its dichotomy. You can always find its opposites. In fact, that's how the symbolism of language is created, through having opposites. We don't know about oneness in the physical world. Everything has its counterpart, its dichotomy, except for silence. Silence is the only experience that is the same as God. It is indivisible. You take silence, and we'll have some right now, and now let's just cut that in half. And what do we have? More silence. Let's take what we've cut in half and cut it in half again and again. And endlessly you attempt to divide into a dichotomy, silence, but you can never do it, because silence is indivisible. And silence is God's one and only voice. When you go into silence, you go into the place where you make conscious contact with God, whatever it is that God means to you. You make conscious contact with that omnipotent, omniscient force in the world, that omnipresence of God. And the reason I say that it's not crowded along the extra mile is because the mile that most people are on is a very, very noisy mile. And I encourage young people to become more comfortable with silence. We live in a world of bulldozers and leaf blowers and trucks that make endless amounts of noise and chatter. And constantly, I have a home, a place a retreat that I go to frequently on Maui. And oftentimes I will walk in the morning and they're in a big building project in Maui. And I'll go past one building after another and start to count the noisemakers, as all of these machines and all of these people who are trying to make the place look so pristine and so beautiful and so landscaped, instead of just letting it grow, just letting it be. Silence and God are one because you can't divide either one of them. Okay? So that going to silence as frequently as you can, and understanding that out of silence, everything is created. The words that you are listening to right now as I speak emerge from silence. That silence is the source. And it's the source that is what we want to make conscious contact with. Like the source of all light is the sun. And the only reason we know about light is because of something called darkness. But when you go to the source can't be divided.
Treat yourself as if you already are what you'd like to be. Whatever it is that you envision for yourself, no matter how lofty or impossible it may seem to you right now, I encourage you to begin acting as if what you would like to become is already your reality. This is a wonderful way to set into motion the forces that will collaborate with you to make your dreams come true. To activate the creative forces that lie dormant in your life, you must go to the unseen world, the world beyond your form. Here is where what doesn't exist for you in your world of form will be created. You might think of it this way. In form, you receive information. When you move to spirit, you receive inspiration. It is this world of inspiration that will guide you to access anything that you would like to have in your life. What it means to become inspired. Some of the most significant advice I've ever read was written more than 2,000 years ago by an ancient teacher named Patanjali. He instructed his devotees to become inspired. You may recall that the word inspire originates from the words in and spirit. Patanjali suggested that inspiration involves a mind that transcends all limitations, thoughts that break all their bonds, and a consciousness that expands in every direction. Here is how you can become inspired. Place your thoughts on what it is you'd like to become, an artist, a musician, a computer programmer, a dentist, whatever. In your thoughts, begin to picture yourself having the skills to do these things. No doubts, only a knowing. Then begin acting as if these things were already your reality. As an artist, your vision allows you to draw, to visit art galleries, to talk with famous artists, and to immerse yourself in the art world. In other words, you begin to act as an artist in all aspects of your life. In this way, you're getting out in front of yourself and taking charge of your own destiny at the same time that you're cultivating inspiration. The more you see yourself as what you'd like to become, the more inspired you are. The dormant forces that Patanjali described come alive, and you discover that you're a greater person than you ever dreamed yourself to be. Imagine that, dormant forces that were dead or non-existent, springing into being and collaborating with you as a result of your becoming inspired and acting as if what you want is already here. By having the courage to declare yourself as already being where you want to be, you will almost force yourself to act in a new, exciting, and spiritual fashion. You can also apply this principle to areas other than your chosen vocation. If you're living a life of scarcity and all of the nice things that many people have are not coming your way, perhaps it's time to change your thinking and act as if what you enjoy having is already here. This doesn't involve deception, arrogance, or hurting others. This is a silent agreement between you and God in which you discreetly work in harmony with the forces of the universe to make your dreams become a reality. This involves a knowing on your part that success and inner peace are your birthright, that you are a child of God, and as such, you're entitled to a life of joy, love, and happiness. In your relationships with your lovers, co-workers, and family, act as if what you would like to materialize in those relationships is already here. If you want a sense of harmony in the workplace, maintain a clear vision and expectation of this harmony. Then you're out in front of your day, seeing 5 o'clock arriving peacefully for everyone when it's still 7:30 in the morning. Each time you have an encounter with someone, your 5 o'clock vision pops into your head, and you act in a peaceful, harmonious way so as not to nullify what you know is coming. Furthermore, you act toward everyone else as if they, too, are all that they're capable of becoming. These kinds of expectations lead you to say, "I'm sure you'll have everything ready this afternoon," rather than, "You're always late with everything, and I wish you'd get on the ball." When you treat others in this way, they also fulfill the destiny that you've reminded them is there for them. In your family, particularly with your children, it's important to always have this little thought in mind. Catch them doing things right. Remind them often of their inherent brilliance, their capacity for being responsible, their innate talents, and their fantastic abilities. Treat them as if they're already responsible, bright, attractive, and honorable. You are so terrific. I'm positive you'll feel great about your interview. You're so smart. I know you'll study well and do well on that exam. You're always connected to God, and God doesn't do sickness. You're going to feel much better tomorrow at this time. When you act toward your children, parents, siblings, and even more distant relatives as if the relationship was great and was going to stay that way, and you point out their greatness rather than their goofiness, it is their greatness that you will see. In your relationships to your significant other, whomever that may be sure to apply this principle as frequently as you can. If things aren't going well, ask yourself, am I treating this relationship as it is or as I would like it to be? So how do you want it to be? Peaceful, harmonious, mutually satisfying, respectful, loving? Of course you do. As such, before your next encounter, see it in those ways. Have expectations that focus on the qualities of inner peace and success. You'll find yourself pointing out what you love about that person rather than what they're doing wrong. You'll also see the other person responding to you in love and harmony rather than in an embittered way. Your ability to get out in front of yourself and see the outcome before it transpires will cause you to act in ways that bring about these results. This strategy for living works for virtually everything. Before I speak to an audience, I always see them as loving, supportive, and having a terrific experience. Before writing, I see myself with no writer's block, being inspired and having spiritual guidance available to me at all times. As A Course in Miracles reminds me, if you knew who walked beside you at all times, you could never experience fear again. This is the essence of inspiration, as well as seeing the future in terms of how you want it to be, and then acting exactly in that manner.
The natural extension of being grateful is the development of a generous heart. Perfect generosity is a willingness to give of yourself and all that you have manifested without any expectation of a return. Manifesting is about connecting to the universal spirit, which is infinite and abundant in supply. Manifesting is not about seeing neediness in yourself, but is rather about feeling complete with that radiant abundance. It is concerned with unconditional love and attracting that abundant love to your individual life. When you feel the presence of that abundance, your feeling of gratitude will push you in the direction of generosity. It is in the expression of your generosity that you will feel most connected to the unconditional love of the universal spirit. The more you feel a desire to share what you receive unconditionally, the more you will experience it flowing into your life. Generosity and self-liberation go together. Generosity is helpful for your own liberation in that it teaches you about the inner quality of letting go. Letting go and releasing your attachments are the most freeing things you can do to liberate yourself from the ego. A need to hang on to things and money you receive arises out of an inner sense of incompleteness. Practicing generosity aligns you with your sense of completeness and love. Generosity extends to more than simply sharing your material possessions. Generosity includes offering kindness, care, love, and nurturing. Furthermore, the spirit of generosity can and does ultimately relate to how we treat ourselves. If you have a generous heart that has no qualms about giving, you will treat yourself lovingly and will nurture yourself without feeling any sense of guilt. Thus, giving and receiving are really the way the universe works. Every single time that you take in a breath and then exhale, you are engaged in a process of giving and receiving that is vital to the material and spiritual world. With each inhalation, you take in the oxygen and nitrogen you must have to exist. And with each exhalation, you send back the carbon dioxide that supplies the entire plant world. The cycle of generous giving and receiving is exactly the same as the very act of breathing. Look around you and notice how everything in our universe is a result of giving and receiving. The entire food chain represents a giving of life and a taking of life, and then a giving back in an endless cycle of material manifestation. The process works in the same way on the spiritual level. You put out loving energy to connect to that which you desire, and it returns to you. It is a giving and receiving action. So therefore, it's really important to cultivate an attitude of generosity. Put generosity into your manifestation practice to keep the natural flow of giving and receiving moving in your life. Recognize that this is a way of being that can be developed. You may have convinced yourself that giving is impossible because you have too little for yourself. If you're not generous when it's difficult, you will not be generous when it is easy. Generosity is a function of the heart, not the wallet. A generous heart is one that places no limitations on its ability to be generous with others and does not do it for reward or recognition. Think of the myriad of things that you do each day for others, including animals and the environment, as ways of practicing generosity. Talking to a lonely neighbor,
feeding a stray cat, opening a door, anonymously paying the toll for the car behind you, vacuuming the carpet, or whatever may occur in the thousands of actions you undertake each day. Most important, remember that to give without expectation of an acknowledgement is truly the work of your higher self. Keep your generosity practices private. Then become aware of the internal resistances that arise within you when you have an impulse to give. Your fear of not having enough for yourself and your family, your doubts about whether others are truly needy, the fact that others won't appreciate it anyway, are impulses that you need to honor as valid. All of these inner doubts and fears should be examined without judgment. And then give yourself designated times and periods of time to practice being generous, particularly in offering service or in giving of your time. Sometimes I notice my young son out playing soccer by himself, wishing in his heart he had someone to play with. I remind myself to forget about the zillion things I have to do, my state of fatigue or whatever, and I designate the next several hours to simply sharing my time with him, something we both love. Practice being able to receive. Accept help when others offer it. Allow others to do for you without feeling embarrassed or without feeling that your independence is threatened. If you turn off the receiving side, you cut the natural flow of energy, just as if you turned off the giving side. Receiving is very much a component of the spiritual practice of manifestation, and you can work at allowing this into your life with gratitude and love. Furthermore, practice giving just a bit more than you think you can, and a bit more than your own comfort level allows. Whatever you have convinced yourself is the limit of your generosity, try going beyond it. You also can practice a little bit more generosity with your own self than you are normally accustomed to. Order the item on the menu that costs more, or give yourself a few extra days on your vacation trip, or allow yourself the luxury of a body massage or a facial. Extend your generosity into service as a way of life. Our encounters and relationships are a central influence on ourselves and each other. Service is a word that is not commonly thought of as part of our ordinary relationships, yet service simply cannot be separated from relationships. When you cultivate an attitude of gratitude and generosity, you will find yourself wanting to be in the service of others. You will find it natural to extend that which you receive into the service of others as well. If you receive a great teaching, you will want to teach it to others. If you receive love, you will wish to extend that love unconditionally outward. Your relationships will automatically be felt as gifts for the service of others. When you contemplate the purpose of your life in the material plane, you will discover that the only thing you can do with your life is to give it away. You cannot lay claim to anything. It is all transitory. You will find your purpose and your strength when you see that you are in a relationship with all other living things, and that you are purposeful and peaceful when you serve in some capacity. It is out of this state of recognizing our fundamental interconnectedness that we realize we are all in a constant state of service to each other. It is this awareness that you want to keep uppermost in your mind as you generate this principle of spiritual manifesting. Service, at its very basic core, is an inner choice to offer a helpful and healing attitude to others as well as to ourselves. A natural outgrowth of feeling grateful for our daily life manifestations is experiencing the inclination to be generous.
The greatest understanding you can have is that you don't understand. And spending your life and your energy and your relationships on trying to always be understood and have someone else agree with you and understand you is one sure way to make sure that you're going to be a victim for the duration of that relationship. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to allow yourself to be in a position where someone else is demanding to be understood by you. There's some things that are very simple, some very simple little clues that I use in my own life and in pulling your own strings that I'd like to share here with you. Under the heading of being quietly effective and knowing you're never going to be understood. First is that shrugging is a virtue. If you could just learn the art of the shrug. I like Ayn Rand's title, Atlas Shrugged. Atlas holding up the whole world and just shrugs. And the whole idea of not having to be in a position to defend yourself or to be understood, or somebody's demanding something from you, and when you could just sort of shrug your shoulders and say, well, I don't understand. I just don't understand, and that's okay. My wife and I do this to each other all the time. I mean, she does the craziest things in the world, and vice versa. I mean, she thinks what I do is crazy too. I mean, she believes in what she's doing and believes that that's the way a house has to be run, for example. She makes the beds first thing in the morning. I mean, that to her is just her way.
have lived under the philosophy that it's not any healthier psychologically to get into a made bed than it is to get into an unmade bed. But she makes the bed. I don't understand somebody getting out of bed in the morning and making the bed, but I don't have to understand. It's not necessary for me to understand. I don't have to get into a you're wrong and I'm right attitude toward it. It's just a simple shrug. If you want to make the bed, that's terrific. I'll even help you if you want to. Just let it go. You don't have to. I don't have to understand that. And you know something? Life is full of those little things. Everywhere you go, you're going to encounter people who do things their own way. And that's really what makes the world go around, that uniqueness, that specialness in people. So if you just shrug at it and stop telling yourself that I have to be right, and I have to make somebody else wrong in all of my interactions with them, just shrug. Just shrug. Quietly shrug your shoulders and say, they have a right. They're on their own path. They have a right to do what they want to do. And you don't have to be understood. And when you get into that mindset of not needing to be understood all the time, then you're not going to be explaining yourself and having somebody else explain themselves to you over and over again endlessly. Being offended is a choice to be a victim. You ever think how silly it is to go around being offended? There are people who turn on the radio and they hear somebody speaking in a certain tone or saying a word that they don't like, and they have a whole vocabulary of words that they're offended by. And if somebody says one of them, right away they go off into a dither. Well, it's just like letting somebody else's behavior decide how you're going to be emotionally. I mean, you can be the kind of person who goes down the street and your emotions are being pulled by everybody else, your strings are being yanked by everybody else in the street, depending on what words they choose, what symbols come out of their mouth. This person says hell, that one says damn, this one says uh-oh, this one says caca, that one says poo-poo, this one says wee-wee, whatever it may be, and you're offended, or whatever synonyms you want to use for all of those functions. For what? It's like allowing yourself the right to process somebody else's behavior for what it is. It's their behavior. It's not yours. If you don't like what somebody is saying on the radio, tune the dial someplace else. If you don't like the way somebody else is dressing, turn your eyes someplace else. Don't feast your eyes on it. If someone else wants to hear rock music that you think is disgusting, then don't listen to it. That's what this whole thing is about. That's what the First Amendment to the Constitution is about. That's what free speech is about. That's what free expression as a human being is about. That there's no code that is going to fit everyone. And choosing not to be offended is to choose not to be a victim. People speak the way they speak. I don't like some of the language that I see in the films. I don't let my children go and see some of the film. I don't like the violence that is on the screen. Rather than being offended by it and being all upset about it and getting myself worked up and being a victim to the people who choose to display violence on the screens, I simply don't go to those movies. I don't have anything to do with them. And I don't miss them, and I happen to believe that it's part of the gratuitous violence that we find throughout the culture. But I'm doing what I can to eliminate that. But being offended by it, being upset by it, it's as silly as being offended by starvation. Starvation is a part of what the universe is about. And so is my desire to change it and to improve it. That's just as important. And that's what I go with. I go with what I'm for rather than what I'm against. Everything that you're against weakens you. Everything that you're for empowers you. So the question is, do you want to be empowered or do you want to be weakened? Everything you fight, you'll be weaker for the effort. Everything that you're for will empower you. When they asked Mother Teresa if she would march against the war in Vietnam in 1967, she said, no, I won't. She said, but if you have a march for peace, I'll be there.